Co-worker staff room killing. On June the 11th this year, a frantic call came into 911 from a store manager. He claimed there was a teenage store worker in the staff room covered in blood. When police arrived 10 minutes later, they found a horrific scene. 17-year-old Riley Whitelaw was completely lifeless on the floor. Police started reviewing CCTV around the store. They found footage of 28-year-old Joshua Johnson, another employee at the store, stacking up bins to cover the CCTV cameras. Bleach was found outside of the store, and a 16-year-old customer also claimed to have heard a woman scream, but they thought that they were just mistaken. Looking into the background further, police discovered that Riley had actually reported Joshua to her manager. She'd said that he was making her feel uncomfortable. He'd made advances towards her, and when she'd rejected him, he was making her feel really uneasy at work. She actually requested to be not put on the same shift as him and not have to work with him. Things got worse when Riley's boyfriend started working at the store as well. Joshua was allegedly extremely jealous about this. Shortly after Riley's body was discovered, police also found Joshua covered in cuts and bruises. He's currently being held on suspicion of murder.
What is one true crime case that you just can't stop thinking about? I always wonder what really happened to 6-year-old Catherine Corzillius. On August 7th, 1996, Catherine, along with her mom Nancy and her brother Chris, were out running errands. Catherine's dad was Paul Corzillius, who at the time was the tour manager for John Bon Jovi. That day was Paul's birthday, so they were all out looking for a present for him. They all lived on Elder Circle, which is a small neighborhood near Austin, Texas. When they got back to Elder Circle, Catherine wanted to pick up the mail from the community mailbox and then walk home. The mailboxes were only about an eighth of a mile from their home, and Catherine had done this a few times before, so her mom let her. Catherine would take the shorter route home, while her mom and brother would take the longer route around Elder Circle. This way, they would be getting home at almost the same time. But once Nancy and Chris got home with still no sign of Catherine, Nancy sent Chris to go and look for her. But when Chris couldn't find her, Nancy started searching for her by car. Within minutes, they found her laying in the middle of the road on Elder Circle. She was unconscious but still breathing. According to Nancy, she didn't want to make her daughter lay on the hot pavement, so she picked her up and took her to the hospital. Little Catherine suffered from a fractured skull and never regained consciousness, and sadly, she died later that day. Authorities initially thought that Catherine was a victim of a hit and run, but certain things didn't add up. Where Catherine's body was found was in an unusual spot. Her mom last saw her walking towards their house, but her body was found a little over a mile away from their home in the opposite direction that she was supposed to have gone. Catherine's body was actually found along the route that her mom and brother took to get home, and the autopsy only deepened the mystery. The autopsy showed that Catherine didn't die from a hit and run. Along with her head injury, she also had abrasions on her left shoulder, lower back, right hip, and her knees. The ME found that Catherine had either jumped, fallen, or was thrown from a moving vehicle. One theory investigators came up with was that Catherine maybe tried to hold on to the back of her mom's car on the drive home, but fell off. This would explain the location of where her body was found. But her family did not believe this, so they hired a PI. The PI noted that it was a really hot summer day, and at the time, Catherine's left thumb was broken and in a splint, so it would have been really difficult for her to hold on to anything. And it's likely her mom would have seen her in the rearview mirror. Catherine's family believes she was abducted and murdered. After her death, investigators brought in a canine unit that tracked her scent to a vacant lot 30 yards from the mailboxes, but it was lost after that. This sparked a theory that Catherine was approached by an attacker at the mailboxes, ran into the lot, was caught and thrown into a car, struck in the head, and then was thrown out of the vehicle where she was found. Nancy also stated that it appeared her daughter's body was laid out for her to find. Her hair was smoothed down, her clothes were straight, and her sandals were still on. Unfortunately, there's never been any answers in this case, and it's still labeled a suspicious death. John Bon Jovi wrote a song dedicated to Catherine called August 7, 415. And sadly, in March of 2020, Catherine's brother Chris, who grew up to be a police officer, was tragically killed in a car accident.
A lot of people disappear without a trace, but in the case of Mura Murray, it seems like something more mysterious might be at play. There is a lot of information to go over, so this is going to be multiple parts, so buckle in. Murray was known as an all-American good girl, and she had straight A's in high school, was a star of her local track team, but all of that flipped on its head as soon as she went away to college. She started off college in West Point, and it turns out after her departure that she had 7 disciplinary hearings. One, which almost or would have gotten her kicked out if she didn't leave, due to shoplifting of makeup. After she left West Point, she went to UMass. When Mura went to UMass, her behavior got really strange, and it seemed like she had this whole secret personality that she was hiding from the world. Well, She first got in trouble because she used another person's credit card to purchase copious amounts of food, and it later became rumored that she had a pretty severe bulimic eating disorder, which again is not confirmed. It is all just rumors. This picture was taken of her after she was caught, which again, this person in this photograph is not the Mura that everyone describes. She was always described as her, this happy, smiling person with amazing dimples who could light up a room. This girl is someone else altogether, and it continues to get weirder. So at Mura's job as a security guard checking student IDs to let them into their dorms, she was acting completely normal until around 1 a.m. when she started hysterically crying and was inconsolable. Someone called Karen, the supervisor, because Mura wasn't able to do her job properly. Karen came, and when she got there, something was really wrong. Something was off. Mura was just staring blankly into space, like just 110% disassociated, depersonalized, checked out. Mura claims that her sister Kathleen had said something to her on the phone, but when call logs were checked, she had spoken to Kathleen at 10:40 p.m., around that time, and the last person she was on the phone with until a little after midnight was her boyfriend, right before she flipped that switch. So Karen walked her back to her dorm, and when she insisted on going up to her room with Mura to talk to her, Mura said, "It's fine, I won't be alone, I have my roommate," which was a lie. Mura lived in a single. Karen recalls how deeply disturbed Mura seemed, and just something was very, very wrong, and she feels incredibly guilty for not pushing the matter and going up to Mura's dorm. She feels like she could have done something. The disappearance of Mura Murray is one of the most mysterious cases I have ever heard of, so let's get right back into it for part 2. Shortly after that whole incident at work with Karen, the supervisor, and lying about having a roommate, Mura's dad showed up to help her buy a new car, which is odd because no one knew that this was happening. No one knew that that's why her dad was there. It only came out that that was the case after she disappeared. Her father, Fred, drove Mura and her 2 friends, Katie and Sarah, to the liquor store to buy copious amounts of alcohol because Sarah was throwing a party. For some incredibly odd reason, Fred gave Mura his car, his brand new car, to drive to and from the party. I don't know about you, but that seems kind of questionable and suspicious to me. Mura, Katie, and Sarah had no recollection of the party, even though it was Sarah who threw it. It was her party. They couldn't tell you who was there, what happened. The only thing that came from it is that Mura supposedly left with a guy, even though that is unconfirmed and she had a boyfriend at the time. She left around 2:30 to bring her dad's car back to him. Mura totaled her dad's car on the way back to the motel. There's no evidence if she got in trouble or not for driving while intoxicated, which it seems like she's very good at sweet-talking her way out of precarious situations that she puts herself in. Somehow, she, after getting a ride back with the tow truck driver, she let herself into her dad's motel room, even though she did not have a key, and called her boyfriend from his phone, cried a little bit about the accident, and then fell asleep. Fred had no idea that she was there, which again, very, very suspicious. How did she get into his motel room, and how in a single room would he have no idea that she was there, even though she called her boyfriend in the room? There's also no statements as to whether there was 1 or 2 beds, so this whole thing just really doesn't make sense. From her dad loaning her his car to go drive to a party where she was obviously going to drink, to her then letting herself into his room after the accident and him having no idea. The next day, after her father left town, is the day that Mura disappeared. What happened to Mura Murray? Let's go over the timeline of the day that she disappeared. At 12:55 p.m., her computer search history shows that she was looking into renting a condo in New Hampshire, where her family used to vacation. At 1 p.m., she sends a seemingly normal email to her boyfriend Billy after missing a lot of calls from him. At 1:13 p.m., she leaves a voicemail from one of her classmates stating that she borrowed a lab coat and wanted to return it. At 1:44 p.m., she leaves an email for her professors and work supervisors saying that there was a death in the family and she needs to take a week away. There was in fact no death in the family, and it is another lie. At 2:18 p.m., she calls her boyfriend back and leaves him a message saying that she will talk to him soon. He missed the call because he was on the phone with her friend, worried about Mura. Over the next few minutes, she misses several phone calls from her boyfriend because she is busy packing up her entire dorm room into a couple boxes that she leaves on her bed. On top of the boxes, there is a printed out email from Billy, her boyfriend, 6 months ago, talking about an incident where he cheated. At 3 p.m., she leaves UMass and is headed towards the White Mountains. At 3:30 p.m., Mura withdraws $280 from an ATM out of her bank account. This only leaves her with $16 to her name. Security footage from the ATM shows that Mura is alone and she doesn't appear to be stressed or pressured in any way. She then proceeds to go to a liquor store, purchase $40 worth of alcohol, and make her last phone call, which is to her dorm room to check her voicemail. At 7:20, a resident reports an accident on Route 112. It was Mura, and her car was in pretty bad shape. She seemed to have hit something like a tree or a snowbank, and when she was headed east, spun around, and her car was facing in the wrong direction, facing west. The picture above is her car after the accident. The witness who called in the accident said that there were two people in the car. There was in fact a man in the passenger side seat smoking a cigarette, which is very plausible because both airbags deployed, although later on the witness retracted that statement and said she must have been seeing. At 7:33, a school bus driver stopped to see if Mura needed help. He lived right down the road and insisted that he call the police. Mura begged him not to, and claimed that she already called AAA, which this man knew was not true because there was no service in the area. Again, another lie. So he got home and immediately called the police. What the heck happened to Mura Murray? I told you guys that this was going to be a long journey. Probably these videos will go into tomorrow. So welcome to part 4. We left off talking about the timeline of Mura's last day, and there is still a lot to go over. After the bus driver called the police, he noted that she did not seem to be injured in any way. There was no blood, even though it was a horrific and traumatic crash. She did seem to be intoxicated, and she was shivering. At 7:46, the first police officers arrived onto the scene. What they found was very strange, or in this case, also what they didn't find. They didn't find Mura. They didn't find any footprints in the snow. It was like she simply vanished. They found red wine that had been drank out of an empty Coke bottle. They found Mura's AAA card, blank accident report forms, and a book on surviving the White Mountains depicting stories about hikers that had just disappeared or left with severe injuries, which to me that's a little strange. I would think that she was planning a disappearance from that book. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. Makeup, jewelry, black leathered gloves, and her favorite stuffed animal was also in the car. What wasn't there were her credit cards, her cell phone, or her picture ID. At 7:54, a bolo was put out to look for a woman traveling on foot. A contractor coming home from work did call the police around 8 and 8:30, claiming to have seen a woman matching Mura's description traveling by foot east on 112. It's very possible it could have been her. Later on in the story, Billy, while in the airport coming to help look for Mura, received a very mysterious phone call from a phone card, and it just was heavy breathing, sobbing, and some whimpers, and he really, to this day, thinks it was Mura. That's the timeline of her last day, and boy, is there a lot to unpack. I will be posting a video tomorrow with all of the theories, but for now, think about it, research it, form your own conclusions, and we will talk about it.